better. Okay, now you can hear me. How's that work? Great, so I hope everybody had a nice break there. Thank you all for being here once again. We're going to kick off a number of technical talks here with myself and some other members of the team. So my name is Dodson. I'm a software engineer on Blockly. I've been on the team for a number of years. I've been on Google CS First for a larger number of years. Been working on all kinds of stuff. Lately, obviously, focused on accessibility. And we've been hearing about accessibility all day for very good reasons. It's very important. It has been our major focus in v12. But it turns out, what all is new in v12? All these accessibility features, yes. Also some other things. We have done work in the past year that is not directly related to accessibility, as it turns out. And so I want to give you just a very high-level overview of what a few of those things might be. Idea here is just many of you work with Blockly in some capacity. Many of you are working on educational contexts. We've added various features and functionality that you may find useful in your own apps and services. And while we do, of course, have release notes, check GitHub, as I think was mentioned earlier, sometimes it's useful to have a few things highlighted and called out. And I do want to show a couple brief demos and some very brief code snippets to give you an idea of what's available, perhaps serve as a little inspiration, and also provide you some context about why it is that we built these things out in the first place. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So first up, we have slightly more extensible variables now. Over the past years, various people on the core team have been working with various of our partners. I personally have been working closely with Scratch to help get them onto the latest version of Blockly. And Scratch does some fun things with variables. They have cloud-synced variables. So those actually are able to persist their values to a cloud data store. If you come back to your project later, you can have that same thing. This is something that is not supported in stock Blockly variables, where you can just serialize them and you can unserialize them, and that's that. We need an additional field to say, like, hey, is this a cloud variable at all? And some ability to perhaps communicate that information elsewhere, do that sort of thing. So we took a look at our variable system, and we have a couple classes responsible for that. We've got variable model, which is the data model that actually stores the information about the variable, its ID, its type, its value. And we have the variable map, which is a class that's responsible for providing convenience methods for creating variables, renaming them, changing their types, so forth. So historically, that was what you got. You got our variable model, our variable map. Now both of those things are registrable. So we have this concept of the Blockly registry, which allows you to, at runtime, swap out implementations of functionality with your own version. So you can now do that for variable models and maps. You can add extra fields and data to them, and then with the variable map, you can customize stuff. So for one thing, if you wanted to make case-sensitive versus case-insensitive variables, a lot of that logic is contained in the variable map and its create methods and rename and such. You could override that and change that behavior in your app if you wanted to. Real quick example, this is pulled right from what we've done with Scratch. We have a variable model, extends our built-in one. It's got a nice constructor. We have an extra value here. Look at that. We can now store whether or not this is a cloud variable. So we're actually able to extend the built-in variables with some additional functionality there. You have that class. You just call register to get it into the registry. That last true argument will go ahead and override the default one. There you go. You're off to the races. Everywhere that you get a variable from Blockly, that's actually going to be your own custom variable model, not the stock one. So nice thing. Of note, this isn't going to, on its own, allow you to do things like lexical variables. There is a wonderful lexical variable plugin that's on our plugin demo showcase, which if you're interested in that, I would recommend you take a look at. But it does open up a few new possibilities for things you might be able to do with the variable system. So we also have more flexible menus now. Quick little demo here. This is our friend the Blockly menu. We now support arbitrary HTML and menu items, including the marquee element. We also support separators. Again, the motivation here is that in our keyboard shortcut experimentation, we decided to use context menus as a way to expose many of the actions to make them more accessible. This is one of the things that inspired menu bars in the first place, is how do we show people what is available. I'm not entirely sure how we're sticking with that long term, but it was what we went with. And that naturally led to an expansion in the number of things in menus. And so having the ability to group and organize your menus is something that might be desirable. This is supported in both contextual menus and in drop-down menus. Both context for both of these features. For the HTML, that's actually also supported in the field grid plugin class in Blockly samples. So it's a nice little virtuous cycle, that being a subclass of field dropdown, gets all this functionality for free. And give you a brief demo here also. So for separators, very easy to use. Just throw a separator true line into your definition of the menu item. Go ahead and register it there with the context menu registry, and it'll be shown with its appropriate weight in the list. You can also, when you're doing set options on a field dropdown, you could pass in a similar sort of setup, get a separator in there. For the HTML ones, you just return an HTML element from display text, which is slightly misleadingly named since it's no longer absolutely strictly text, but makes it keep working with what you already got. So we just create a marquee, we slap some text in it, we return that. All of a sudden, you have a marquee in your context menu in Blockly. You can do other things. You could do something actually useful. You could, if you want some sort of help content, we've supported images for a long time, but this lets you do a wider scope of things. So. Yes, yeah, the blink tag. You could put a marquee tag in a blink tag and be the height of GeoCities, yes.
Can I put a workspace in it?
Maybe. Just because you can do something doesn't necessarily mean that you should. One other thing is we handle the focus and the keyboard navigation with the systems that Ben and Christopher are going to be talking about for you with this. So if you put stuff in there, we will make sure that you can navigate through it using the arrow keys and all when we're in a keyboard navigation mode without you having to worry about that so much. I would not be entirely shocked if it were possible to put a workspace into it and then navigate focus into that workspace and do the whole thing. And if it's not, it probably should be, but we'll leave that aside for now. All right, so we now also allow you to put arbitrary things into the flyouts. Historically, flyouts were limited to just blocks, buttons, spacers, and I think that's it. Labels, which are just buttons, actually, as it turns out, but they don't look like buttons and you can't click them. So now you can put whatever you would like in a flyout, again, perhaps including a workspace, although I don't recommend it. But you can put workspace comments in there. This, once again, was inspired by some stuff that we were doing with the Scratch partnership. Scratch has a continuous toolbox, and it has section headers, some of which include a little status dot for extensions that interact with physical items. So actual pieces of hardware, there's a little dot to say, hey, is the Wi-Fi or the Bluetooth pairing connected? We didn't have a way to do that before. So now, in order to show a tiny dot in a label, we actually just let you stick whatever you would like into a flyout. Again, we've got a quick demo here. Here's how we actually did that workspace comment. This is very lightly elided for space constraints, but almost you could copy and paste this and get workspace comments into your flyout. So we have a new flyout inflator class that is responsible for constructing items inside of flyouts. Note that that class can be overridden, and so we have default implementations that inflate blocks and buttons and so forth. If you wanted to customize how those things get created, you could create a subclass, register that in its place, and then your inflator would be used. We actually use this in the continuous toolbox plugin in samples in order to implement block recycling. So if you want to see a worked example of that, that would be a place to look. In short, you get handed a state object, which is JSON that you define in your toolbox definition. You get handed a reference to the flyout. You are responsible for creating whatever the thing you want to stick into the flyout is. You wrap it in a flyout item and you return it. We have this method to specify the gap after that item in the flyout. You probably just wanted to return default, but if you want to do some customization there, you can do that. There's a dispose method for you to clean up whatever you've done. If you, for example, register mouse or key handlers, this would be a place to clean those up. And then we just have a get type method, mostly for our internal purposes, so we can go through and know what's happening in there. So once you have this class, again, you register it with the Blockly registry, and now when you have your toolbox definition, you just specify the kind of the thing. It looks up the inflator for that kind of thing, passes it off the inflator, whatever it gets back goes into the flyout. There you go. So have fun with this, maybe. Use power carefully, wisely, but gives you something that you might be able to do some interesting things with. All right, so we have toasts as well. Cheers to everybody listening to this talk. They are brief auto-dismissing notifications that are sort of an alternative to modal dialogues. So we've long supported modals. At one point, Chrome was going to get rid of modals, which caused a brief panic. I think they gave that up when they realized that people use them in important pieces of software that are never updated. So they're around for now, but if you want an alternative, we now have toasts as well. They're in the blockly.dialog package along with confirm prompt alert. You can style them with CSS. This leads into something we'll talk about in just a moment. You can also entirely swap out our default implementation for your own. Brief example of that, here's how you send one. You just call blockly.dialog.toast, specify the workspace, hand it a message, say how long you want it to show for in seconds. We also actually allow you to dedupe them, so if you just want to fire and forget but only have that type of toast show once, you can hand in an ID and say that you just want this shown once. It's another nice little piece that we have. And then this latter bit of code here gives you an example of how you can do your own custom callback to do whatever you would like to make your own toast. If you want to do rye or wheat or something, have at it. Again, you just get handed this toast configuration option blob from up here in the workspace, and it's up to you to go ahead and construct something, show it, present it, do what you want with that. Or you can just use CSS and target the existing toast if you just want to make it look more in line with the look and feel of your application. And that brings me to our last point here, which is CSS for styling. So Blockly has been around for 12 years, long time? Yeah. CSS has come a long way in 12 or 15 years, as many of you know. And so we were somewhat limited in what we could do in the early days of Blockly. We invented things like the theme system. In many cases, we have things that you might have to specify in some JSON files or override or subclass to change the look and feel of things. In short, CSS is now the recommended approach for styling things in Blockly. And that's a very expansive view of things. That's things like the focus outline on blocks and elements that you're working with in keyboard navigation. That's things like toolbox categories. That's the look and feel of the workspace itself. Look and feel of blocks is still probably mostly a rendery thing, but we're getting there. So we've made a lot of changes to the built-in classes attached to elements in Blockly v12. This was one of the larger breaking changes that hopefully didn't break too many people too severely. We've tried to sort of normalize them. They generally all have a Blockly prefix. We've added them in places that didn't have them. So the hope is that you should be able to easily construct selectors to target elements in the Blockly UI and then apply your own style through CSS. And broadly speaking, that's what we would recommend you do in favor of the existing theme system. Where you find that you're not able to do that, that's something that we want to know about, so please do file an issue or otherwise let us know. This is going to be ongoing work probably for the next couple minor point releases as we add selectors and we improve things and make things more themable through CSS, but that's the direction that we're broadly looking to go in from here moving on. Yes? That is a wonderful question. They are documented in the Web Inspector where which you can open up and select the element that you would like to style. And I believe there's even a thing to copy a selector in there. That is the recommendation for the moment, but our illustrious Ron is working with us to try and create some proper documentation. Yes, yeah. So hopefully we'll have some better guides for you in relatively short order about doing that sort of customization. Yeah, that pretty much wraps it up for some of the highlights of what's new in V12. Obviously, lots of accessibility work. Hopefully, you find some of these things useful and worthwhile as well. As always, note that many of these came from our work with our partners, with Scratch, with MakeCode, Code.org, so forth. Our partners include all of you here. So if you find that there's something that you're not able to do in Blockly that you would like some additional functionality or APIs to do, please let us know. You can send an email to the forum. You can file issues in the GitHub repo. It's your feedback that makes Blockly what it is and helps us set our roadmap and direction and prioritize APIs and opportunities for extension. So we can't do that without you letting us know what it is that you need. Yeah, questions? Yeah.
So I upgraded to 12. It was very easy. Great job on that.
Thank you.
So much. One question I have is, does the serialization format change in terms of any compatibility? So, for example, files saved in 11 or some earlier version, will those have any problem being read in 12?
I do not believe so. That's broadly something that we spend a lot of attention and care trying to not make changes to for obvious reasons. And most of what we did change in 12 was not related to things that were serialized so much as more look and feel and extension points and accessibility and so forth. Yeah, so you should be good there. By all means, if you're not, please do let us know. That would be something we'd take seriously. Well, in that case, thanks so much. Really appreciate your time.